Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, a channel, a platform, and a modality where we apply the principles of interiorism to living free. And guys, while we've said this channel is not strictly about interiorism, it is about living free. And we bring all of the resources that we have at our disposal to bear on that very pragmatic aim. But there's nothing more pragmatic in applying and implementing the most powerful tools that you have when you can. It is in that spirit, guys, in that vein, that I'm very proud again to be producing this series on interiorism. We've started a series of videos in the last few weeks, and we're going to go on with them. Basically, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be detailing first of all, the philosophic and scientific proofs of interiorism, and then we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty with what interiorism is, and we're going to be giving you tools that you can start practicing and implementing immediately. But you will have, if you continue with this series, and if you watch every video in this series, I'm going to link the first videos in this series, we're going to put them together. If you watch these videos, you will have a complete understanding of the philosophy of interiorism and how you can apply it to living free. So this video, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be dense, okay? But if you keep up with me, you're going to have a weapon. And that weapon is going to be intellectual certainty. See, when we're intellectually certain about something, we have more of an encouragement to use that thing or to do that thing. That's why we're making this video. You see, the beauty of interiorism, the beauty of any science actually, or any sort of, shall we say, applied science, because theoretical science is another matter. But we can look at interiorism as an applied science, guys, like engineering. And you don't necessarily have to understand the principles completely to practice the results. You don't have to believe in interiorism to practice interiorism. All you have to do is do it. Like great scientists say, you don't have to believe it, just do it. Do you have to believe in a car to start a car? No. But belief is going to help you have more confidence, and it's going to make you a more well-rounded person. It's in that spirit, guys, that we're doing this video. The next video is going to be very interesting, the next video in this series, to a lot of people, because it's going to outline the scientific aspects, especially proofs from physics and chemistry and other sciences, to interiorism. This one might not get as many viewers, but I believe it's one of the most important ones to put out there, because I am sensing that the world needs this, guys. The world needs this constant intellectual reminder. And a lot of people have been upset with some of my videos because they said, well, Javier, you're rambling too much about theory and get to the point. And those people are welcome not to watch the videos. I'm going to continue expounding on these. And again, primarily, I don't make the videos in this channel to serve others. I make them for my own selfish purposes. I make them basically as a journal. I watch these videos later, I benefit from them. They're like reminders. They're like Marcus Aurelius' meditations for the modern age. So if you want to join me and come along, I'd love to have you, and I love to benefit your life. If you don't, feel free to skip. But we're going to go into the intellectual foundations of interiorism. And this is going to be from more of a philosophical bent. I'm not going to go into the scientific proofs of interiorism, as we said. This is going to be in another video. But I am going to give you some hard-hitting intellectual reasons as to why to believe in interiorism and how that's going to impact your life. So first of all, guys, the first aspect that I want to get into is why we're doing this. Because what I want to do is to give you an intellectual stimulus and encouragement. And I want to first of all convince you, it's going to be difficult, but I believe that we can do that, that even if the principles of interiorism are not true, even if the evidence that I give in this video is weak, that's going to be for you to judge and for intellectual minds to judge, it will still behoove you to practice interiorism. And in that vein, we want to go into some of the teaching of William James, of course, the great American psychologist, but some people say the father of psychology. William James wrote a book called Pragmatism, and he flipped philosophy on its head, of course, inspired by a lot of the idealist philosophers, which we can go into. It's very interesting. We're not going to go deeply into it in this video, but basically, the judgment of a proposition or a statement, the standard of whether it's true or not, should be its consequences in your life. And he talks about this, and I just want to read a little bit from his book, maybe one statement from his book. He talks about some banal propositions like, if a man goes around a squirrel, does he go around a squirrel or not? And he's talking about, well, first of all, does this have any sort of import into your life? If it doesn't have any import into your life, it can be fun philosophical speculation, but it's not going to help you a lot. Of course, that's an axiomatic statement there. But what he says, the principle of pragmatism, he said what Peirce said, which was another philosopher, all realities influence our practices, and that influences their meaning for us. So any philosophy is going to influence what we do, and that's going to be their meaning for us. So what you do with interiorism, guys, it's going to be its meaning to you. And he also says here, pragmatism represents a perfectly familiar attitude in philosophy, the empiricist attitude. And we talked about in the beginning of this channel how we base our whole philosophy upon empiricism, upon what we can observe, guys. So we're starting with what we can observe here. But it represents, it seems to me, both in a more radical and less objectionable form than it has ever yet assumed. A pragmatist turns his back resolutely and once and for all upon a lot of inveterate habits dear to professional philosophers. So the pragmatist is going to ignore a lot of what philosophy is teaching simply because of the fact that it doesn't benefit us. And he goes on here, but he just basically talks about ideas are part of our experience. They become true, and I want to end with this on his book, just insofar as they can help us to get into a satisfactory relation with other parts of our experience. So how do we tell the story to ourselves of our experiences, and how do we represent to ourselves the cause and effect relationships both within us and in our world? So another huge benefit of putting these principles before our minds, and we've talked about this a lot. So we're going to draw a lot from the Stoics and especially Marcus Aurelius, because remember, interiorism draws on the perennial philosophy. And Marcus Aurelius is the epitome of the perennial philosophy. It's basically principles that were taught not only by philosophers, but by religions, by mystics, and they were summed up by his teachers and put down and preserved for us by the great Stoic teachers. So when we resort to Stoicism, this is the perennial philosophy, and while many people may oppose that, I will take liberally from any sources that I believe have significance to getting our points across. So Marcus Aurelius always said, reflect upon the principles. And because we have to always bring our principles before our mind. As I've said in other videos, guys, interiorism, you're not just going to wake up one day and be an interiorist and just be perfectly rooted in that modality. Something's going to happen, and you're going to get pushed out of it. You know, the great Mike Tyson, who was another great philosopher, said that everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. Well, when you get punched in the mouth, all of your talk about interiorism is going to get thrown on the side, and that's okay. It happens to me. It happens to all of us. We get back on the horse by reminding ourselves every morning or periodically, every evening, whenever you can, about the principles, and then it becomes easier and easier for us to implement those principles. And I just wanted to read something from what Marcus Aurelius says. He says, contemplate the formative principles. That's the root of things, guys. That's interiorism of things and of their coverings, the purposes of actions. So he's saying don't just look on the surface, penetrate to the causes of that. That's what interiorism is. We're going to get into that. Consider what pain is, what pleasure is, and death, and fame. Who is to himself the cause of his uneasiness? How no man is hindered by another, and that everything is an opinion. Very rich, guys. Very incredible. In the application of thy principles, thou must be like the pancreatist, not like the gladiator. For the gladiator lets fall the sword which he uses and is killed. But the other always has his hand and needs to do nothing else but use it. Very deep, guys. See what things are in themselves, dividing them into matter, form, and purpose. When we see something on the outer, we need to be able to penetrate to its essence to represent to ourselves what it is, so that then we can have a better interaction with it. That's what interiorism is all about, guys. So, what is my contention here? What is the contention of interiorism? The first contention, as we said, and I'm not going to go into deep proofs on this, but we are going to talk about this with the scientific aspects and with the applicational business aspects. It doesn't matter if interiorism is true or not. The basic axiom of interiorism is that the inner is the outer. There is no separation. What you do on the inner happens on the outer, always and perfectly, guys. Always and perfectly means never fails. Now, that's going to have a great impact upon your outer life, even if interiorism is not true. Why? Because you're going to take the actions that you need to take in order to get the result on the outer. Of course, on the outer, it looks like we take actions, although from the point of view of interiorism, we do not take actions that are outside of alignment. Rather, we are carried in flow of that. So the actions are an offshoot of the inner. We'll go into that more too. But even if you consider that we take actions, it's a lot easier to take them if you have an interiorist outlet. So that's going to be my main thesis. So again, going into my basic intellectual thesis here. And we go back to Marcus Aurelius, guys. And Marcus Aurelius said this, and I want to read it word for word. It's called providence or atoms, guys. And in the Stoics' view, is the world controlled by providence? Or is it random? Those are two arguments. And we have two arguments also vis-a-vis interiorism. The first is that everything is on the inner and therefore can be affected by the will. Or reality is objective and on the outer, and then we cannot control a great portion of it. Of course, what portion we can't control, we don't know, but we have to simply put our behavior in congruence with the outer and then hopefully get something. Those are the two arguments. What does Marcus Aurelius say? Whether the universe is a concourse of atoms or nature is a system, let this first be established, that I am a part of the whole which is governed by nature. Next, I am in a manner intimately related to the parts which are of the same kind with myself. For remembering this, inasmuch as I am a part, I shall be discontented with none of the things which are assigned to me out of the whole, for nothing is injurious to the part, if it is for the advantage of the whole. And in another statement he says, if it's just atoms, then I don't want to live in a world like that, so I'm going to put the image in my mind of Stoicism, of providence, and of organization. And that's the same aspect that we take in interiorism. If interiorism is not true, and if there is no effect from the inner to the outer, there is no bridge between those, or there is one that we can influence some things but not other things, then at least live as we can influence everything, and that's going to be a benefit, not least for our mental health. And I hope you understand me just a little bit here. I wrote here, what is our decision, guys? Either we have free will or we do not. And will is going to be very important in interiorism, because what I call will is in fact the only existent, and we'll go into that as well. But either we have free will or we do not, or a combination. Most believe in a combination. But this is to make the outer our master. What if it were true? But even if it were true, we were to act as if everything depended on our will, what would happen? I'm going to be talking about this in future videos. Many of the great self-help authors and many of the great psychologists, sports psychologists, and others, people of wealth, have said take responsibility for everything. So we already know that taking responsibility for everything, and some great psychologists even say, take responsibility for what surely is not your fault. That gives you power, guys, and that gives you the ability to operate as a free agent. So the interiorism is this radical taking of responsibility, and we're going to show you why and how. Another thing that I thought about, even granting that everything is not under our will, guys, we do not know what is and what is not. And that's the thing. Like, for example, before the 1 minute mile, we thought that it was impossible, that conquering the 1 minute mile was not within our will. But when somebody did it, I believe it was Bannister, then others started doing it, and then we added to our knowledge the fact that that was within our will. So even things today we think are not within our will are going to be within our will, can be in the future. It's just a matter of time. So gravity was never under our will until we started flying, and then we subjected that under our will. So if someone says this is not under your will, meaning you can't affect it simply by an intention, know that that's empirically can be false, can be proved false with time. This whole idea makes us more active, guys. It makes us try. Rather than just sitting there and saying it's impossible and not taking action at all, we do take action. That's the benefit that interiorism can have. So I ask you during this course in interiorism, guys, suspend disbelief. Even if you don't believe that interiorism is feasible or true, or you don't believe my arguments are strong, suspend disbelief and give it a try, just for this one aspect, that if you take responsibility, you're more likely to get your goals. You're more likely to achieve them. So what I want to do here, very as briefly as I can, is lay out some deductive proofs or intellectual proofs for interiorism. Of course, what is interiorism? We're going to go into it a little bit deeply. It is a philosophy that I have basically compiled from a lot of the principles and the teachings that I've studied in mysticism, in science, in religion, what have you. And to me, it's a philosophy of action. It's an ethic which aims to influence, guys, the outer through the inner. In a word, what it aims to do is to give you great leverage. Because if it's true that the inner is the outer, then there is a bridge between them because they are one and the same. Therefore, in the dream, interiorism gives you a lot of leverage. It's using the unseen to influence the seen. It's leverage, guys. It's going to give you a lot more results than you would have if you were to do something else. For our purposes, the interior is the unseen or the spiritual, and the exterior or the manifested is the seen. So the interior, guys, and this is, we don't need proof for this because this is by definition. The interior is totally subject to will. That's what it is. So if something is within you, and specifically we mean your mental states and your imaginal states, those are completely within your will. You can close your eyes and I can tell you to imagine a blue elephant. Now, can you see a blue elephant on the outer? Probably not. That's not within your will. But within your imagination and your interior, that is within your will. So even if in the interior you can't imagine something, like let's say your emotions are so negative that you just can't imagine yourself with your specific person, let's say. You could imagine it, but it's going to be hard. But what you do is then you take it a step back and you can go within and say, okay, my feelings are just too negative about this. Let's suppose, forget about the specific person, but how would I feel if I were with my specific person? You can get to that feeling, guys. That's what I mean by saying that you can get there simply by taking a step back here. So the basic philosophy underlying interiorism, and we've talked about this in other videos, is called monism. And that's basically the philosophy, the knowing that there's only actually one existent. And I want to just shortly prove to you why that's the case intellectually. We're going to do it scientifically later. I just want to do it intellectually so you can take this and do the thought experiments, think about it, and actually come to that conclusion. Monism says only one thing or matter exists independently. And I prepared notes for this, guys, because this is dense stuff. We can call this force, the only thing that exists, will. And it's will, guys, because it is that instrument that makes things exist and makes things happen. Nietzsche talked a lot about it. Schopenhauer talked a lot about it. All of the great philosophers had their say on this. It wills everything into existence, and this goes into the ancient myth of Sophia. Of course, Sophia was the one existent, and in Gnostic mythology, Sophia actually went to sleep, and then she split in two, and then she dreamed the multiplicity, and that's what this all is, the dream of Sophia, which is the only existent, which is wisdom, and I would dare say will, which is split up in the dream, guys. So you can come to this knowing that only one thing exists very simply. Try to imagine something existing independently of a substratum. So, for anything to exist, guys, exist in Latin means to stand up or to stand out, existere. So it's not even, words are not very accurate in describing what we want to describe. They'll do the job and they'll point you to the knowledge, but you have to go within and get the knowing, guys. But imagine something else coming to be. So imagine something existing, and then imagine something else existing in that same substratum, on that same ground. If it exists independently, guys, that other thing, then it can't be coming out of the substratum, because that would make it a dependent existent. That would make it, for our terms, the outer. So, therefore, either it's not really a separate existent, but it's the one thing, or that other thing doesn't exist at all, guys. Another way, we see everything that is comes in and out of being. Everything we observe is coming to be and passing away. But in order for those changes to take place, there must be an observer or a substratum. Everything that we observe comes to be and passes away, guys. But there has to be one existent behind that that's observing the passing away and coming to be, or within which this is occurring. So there has to be one existent that's real, that remains, and that is the one true existent. Continuing with this. What is that interior existence, guys? So physicality in itself is limiting because it has to take place within space and it has parts. But the one existence is all, so it can't be limited. So the one existence can't be physical. So what's the opposite of physical? It's mental. So everything that exists is mental. And then we go, of course, into Neville Goddard, that the whole existence is imagination. Imagination is the basis of all existence. What takes place within imagination? Because if imagination only exists, then anything that's contrived to come out of that must take place within it. Well, mental activity, imaginations, thoughts. So we can go very shortly to the conclusion from there that everything is imaginings and everything is thoughts. Therefore, there is no distinction between the physical and the mental. Therefore, everything is mental. Therefore, everything exists within, and you don't even need a bridge from within to without. That right there proves that interiorism is the way that things are affected in the dream, in the illusion, guys, in the Maya. And what we're trying to do is affect things in the dream, in the illusion, in the Maya, but we're doing it with the realization, with the knowing that the only existence is within. I hope you follow me just a little bit. Another proof for this is whatever one imagines is limited because it comes into being and it goes out of being. It ends. So therefore, the physical and the imagination are one and the same because the physical is also limited. But the true existence, the imagination, as Neville Goddard teaches us, is unlimited. Therefore, the physical and the mental are one and the same, guys. Therefore, there's no inner and there's no outer. I hope you understand me just a little bit. This blows my mind. It's just a result of deep thinking. It's a result of contemplation, and it will lead you to the fact, ladies and gentlemen, of what? And it's going to be a subject for all of these videos. We're living in a simulation, guys. I firmly know, and I firmly believe, from intellectual proof, from mathematical and scientific proofs that we're going to talk about, we're living in a simulation. All of this is a simulation. It's like a computer game. The cool thing about it is we came to this simulation to have experiences that we could not have if we were unlimited. But right now you've got the key, guys. You've got the cheat code to the simulation. If you reflect on these facts, your mind's going to be blown, and then you're going to start living as if it really doesn't matter, because it really doesn't matter, but you can get anything you want a lot more easily just by knowing it's a simulation, guys. So think about your dreams. When you dream, do you know that you're dreaming? No. Do you know that you're in a simulation? No. You're just acclimated and normally in it. But when you wake up from that dream, you realize that was just a dream. Just like when you wake up from this simulation, you're going to realize that it was just a simulation. We're going to go into this more in the scientific aspects. It's going to blow your mind, guys. But no, this is a simulation. So from all this, guys, from this whole long-winded conversation, the essential principle or proposition of interiorism can readily be seen just through these intellectual exercises. That is that all is within, all is interior. If all is interior, then all is subject to your will. See how exciting this is, guys. There's nothing outside your will. There's nothing that you cannot do or cannot influence. This is all within, so you can do, be, or have whatever you want. That means you can have anything you want now that I wrote down here, and it is real the moment you imagine it. The degree of reality will, of course, depend on the intensity of your feeling, which is also in the dream. In the dream, two principles hold. One is the law of attraction. Like attracts like. But this happens in time and in space, as we talked about in other videos. So you don't have to try to attract. You don't have to try to get into alignment. Because in the simulation, there's a film roll in which you're already in alignment. So it's going to happen anyway. The law of assumption is the exercise of the will in assuming things to be the case until the physical belief system, the body, which is also part of the dream, comes into belief. We can exercise various methods to do this. We're going to be giving you methods in the next few days, shortcuts to get there. But the simplest method is just the method of interiorism. You realize it is yours now. And an added benefit to that is you will see that on the outer.